The sound of Dr. Maya Chen's dismissal echoed through the pristine lobby of Westlake Memorial Hospital like a thunderclap. "You're terminated, effective immediately. Leave your badge and coat at the desk." The entire lobby froze. Patients waiting for appointments, nurses hurrying between stations. Even the maintenance staff paused as Director Elizabeth Hargrove's voice cut through the morning bustle. Her platinum blonde hair was pulled into a severe bun, designer glasses perched on her nose, and her expression was one of calculated disdain. Standing before her was Dr. Maya Chen, a 28-year-old Asian-American resident physician, the only one of her background in the hospital's prestigious cardiology program. Her face, still bearing the exhaustion of a 36-hour shift, remained composed despite the public humiliation unfolding. "Gross violation of hospital protocol," Hargrove continued, her manicured finger pointing accusingly. "Using emergency resources without authorization, bypassing administrative channels, and for whom? Some vagrant without identification or insurance who can't possibly compensate us for services rendered." The silence in the lobby was deafening. Even the pharmacy cart stopped squeaking. At the reception desk, Bradley Wilson, the night administrator, smirked victoriously from behind his computer. Maya didn't plead or argue. She stood tall, her dark eyes revealing nothing of the storm raging within. This was the same doctor who had graduated top of her class at Stanford Medical School, who had published groundbreaking research on emergency cardiac interventions. Now she was being publicly disgraced for saving a life. Hargrove stepped closer, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "People like you need to understand boundaries. This isn't a charity." Each word was laced with prejudice. This wasn't just about last night's emergency. It was about Maya's ethnicity, her gender, her audacity to excel in a system that wasn't built for her success. Maya slowly removed her white coat, the symbol of her calling, and placed it on the reception desk. Next came her ID badge, M. Chen, M.D., cardiology resident. She placed it atop the coat. "I saved a life," she said quietly, her voice steady. "If that's grounds for termination, I accept the consequences." Hargrove laughed coldly. "You saved nobody, just some homeless man who'll probably be dead by tomorrow. What you've killed is your own career." Two security guards approached. One, Thomas Rodriguez, who had greeted Maya with coffee every morning for 2 years, couldn't meet her eyes as he gestured toward the exit. Maya walked out with dignity, past dozens of staring faces, some sympathetic, others judgmental, most simply uncomfortable. No one spoke up, no one intervened. As she pushed through the revolving doors, Maya paused. Her gaze drifted to a corner of the hospital grounds where a disheveled man often sat. Today, that spot was empty. Instead, a tall man in an impeccable charcoal suit stood nearby, speaking intently into a smartphone that cost more than most people's monthly salary. Something about him made Maya's heart skip. She had broken protocol to save a life, but perhaps that life would change everything. The events of the previous night still played vividly in Maya's mind as she walked away from Westlake Memorial. At 2:17 a.m., the emergency entrance had slid open, and a man had staggered in his expensive clothes torn and muddied, blood streaming from a head wound, barely conscious. "Please, help," he had managed before collapsing on the polished floor, his head striking the edge of a chair with a sickening crack. Bradley Wilson had barely looked up from his phone. "No ID, no insurance, no treatment," he'd said, returning to scrolling through Instagram. "Those are the rules." Maya had assessed the situation instantly. Severe head trauma, possible internal bleeding, dilated pupils. Without intervention, he had minutes, not hours. She'd rushed forward, checking his carotid pulse weak but present. She'd called out orders: "Prep trauma room 2, Get the neuroscan ready. I need an IV line now. What are you doing? Bradley had demanded, standing up. You can't treat him without authorization. That's against protocol. Maya hadn't bothered responding. Her hands were already performing chest compressions as blood trickled from the man's mouth, a concerning sign. Nurse Patel, help me with the airway, she'd called to her colleague. Nurse Patel had hesitated, glancing nervously at Bradley. I don't want to get reported. Then I'll do it alone, Maya had replied sharply. But if he dies, it's on all of us. When Dr. James Washington arrived minutes later, he'd immediately grasped the severity of the situation and joined Maya without question. The emergency team had mobilized like a well-oiled machine, IVs inserted, monitors connected, scans ordered. Meanwhile, Bradley had stood at his desk, arms crossed, watching Maya as if she were committing a crime rather than saving a life. After 90 minutes of intensive work, they had stabilized the patient and transferred him to the ICU. Maya, her scrubs soaked with blood and sweat, had collapsed into a chair, exhausted but satisfied. She hadn't known the man's name or background, and it hadn't mattered. A life was a life. But in Elizabeth Hargrove's hospital, Maya had learned the hard way. Some lives were valued more than others, and some doctors, regardless of their skill, would never truly belong. Maya's small apartment in the eastern district of the city felt especially empty that morning. She'd lived alone since moving for her residency 3 years ago, the walls adorned with her medical school diploma and photos of her parents, who had sacrificed everything to send their daughter to the best schools. She made herself tea, her hands still trembling slightly from the morning's events, when her phone rang. 4 missed calls from an unfamiliar Manhattan number. As she stared at the screen, it rang again. Dr. Chen speaking, she answered cautiously. Dr. Maya Chen. The voice was male, cultured, with the confident tone of someone accustomed to authority. This is Alexander Blackwood, Chief Counsel at Blackwood, Mercer. We need to speak with you urgently regarding the patient you treated last night. Maya's grip tightened on her phone. Are you his lawyer? Is he all right? A brief pause. We represent Mr. James Everett. And yes, thanks entirely to your intervention, he's stable. But this matter extends beyond medical care. The events of last night could expose a system of corruption that's been operating unchecked for years. Mr. Everett would like to meet with you immediately. Maya sat down, her mind racing. James Everett, the name was familiar. The CEO of Everett Global Health, one of the largest healthcare conglomerates in the country, with dozens of hospitals and a revolutionary medical technology division. If this is about legal repercussions for my unauthorized treatment, I understand, but I only did what my medical oath required, she said carefully. No, Dr. Chen, Blackwood replied, his tone softening. No one is suing you. On the contrary, you're about to become the catalyst for significant change. We need you at our offices within the hour. The address will be sent to you. His voice lowered. And remember this, Dr. Chen, what you didn't just save one man. It may have initiated the collapse of an entire corrupt healthcare system. An hour later, Maya found herself in a sleek conference room in a glass skyscraper downtown. Alexander Blackwood, a distinguished black man in his 40s wearing an impeccable navy suit, greeted her with respect that felt foreign after the morning's humiliation. Dr. Chen, I know today has been extraordinarily difficult, but what you're about to hear could change not only your future, but potentially healthcare access across the country. He placed a tablet before her. On the screen was a photo of the man she'd treated, now clean-shaven and wearing a tailored suit, standing beside the president at a White House healthcare summit. The caption read, James Everett, CEO, Everett Global Health. Is that him? Maya asked, stunned. Blackwood nodded. James has a habit of walking alone monthly through different neighborhoods. No security, no entourage to maintain perspective on the communities his hospitals serve. Last night, he slipped on a wet embankment and struck his head. If not for you, he would have died before reaching another facility. Maya stared at the image, remembering the man's desperate eyes as he collapsed. Blackwood opened a file, but the issue isn't just his survival. James was conscious enough to witness everything being left bleeding on the floor, denied care because he lacked identification, and you the only one who intervened despite the consequences. And Hargrove? Maya asked quietly. Public termination, defamation, discrimination, Blackwood replied, his expression hardening. You're our primary witness, but before proceeding, you need to decide. Are you prepared to challenge the entire system that discarded you this morning? Maya looked out at the city skyline, thinking of Hargrove's contemptuous stare, Bradley's smirk, and the feeling of being escorted out like a criminal. I don't want revenge, she said slowly. I want justice for myself, for patients who've been turned away like my father was years ago, and for anyone deemed unworthy of care because they lack the right insurance or come from the wrong background. Maya sat motionless as Blackwood showed her more evidence on the tablet. The screen displayed James Everett, founder and CEO of Everett Global Health, a multi-billion-dollar enterprise encompassing hospitals, medical research facilities, and health technology innovations. He was right there, bleeding on the floor with everyone watching and doing nothing, she whispered, almost to herself. Blackwood nodded gravely. Exactly. No identification, no insurance seen a thing to prove his worth in their eyes. But one person didn't need that proof, and that was you. He scrolled to security footage showing Maya kneeling beside Everett, performing chest compressions, her face determined despite blood spattering her scrubs. The video then shifted to Bradley refusing to help, returning to his phone instead of assisting. Everything was recorded, Blackwood explained. We secured the footage before Hargrove could delete it. Did she know who he was? Maya asked. No, but she will very soon. Blackwood handed her another document, containing statistics that made her blood run cold. Over the past 5 years, 83% of minority patients without premium insurance had been denied admission at Westlake. During the same period, substantial donations had flowed to Mayor Richard Hargrove's campaigns, Elizabeth Hargrove's brother. Patients denied care were often undocumented to maintain the hospital's quality ratings, and at least 17 deaths had resulted from delayed treatment predominantly affecting Asian, Black, and Latino patients. So these people died simply because they weren't deemed valuable enough to save, Maya said, her voice hollow. Blackwood didn't need to answer. The data spoke volumes. When James Everett regained consciousness in a private room at his own flagship hospital, his first request wasn't for his medical team or board members, but for Alexander Blackwood, an attorney known for investigating healthcare discrimination cases. Everett had recounted everything: being abandoned at the reception desk, Bradley's indifference, and the young Asian doctor who had rushed to save him without knowing his identity. A doctor the system had always sought to marginalize. We want you to be the centerpiece of a campaign to reform the entire discriminatory healthcare structure, Blackwood explained. But that means facing media scrutiny, potential backlash, and character assassination attempts. Maya thought of her father, who had died after being repeatedly turned away from emergency rooms despite showing clear cardiac symptoms. She remembered the Asian and immigrant patients she'd seen dismissed at Westlake, sent away because all beds were occupied while private rooms sat empty. I'm not doing this for publicity, she said, her eyes resolute. I'm doing it so people like my father don't die because they're seen as undeserving of care. Blackwood nodded. Then prepare yourself. The fight begins today. As Maya left the meeting with determination and confidential documents in hand, across town in her seventh-floor office, Elizabeth Hargrove paced confidently, believing her world remained firmly under control. She had no idea that every word and action of hers since yesterday had been documented, and the catalyst for her downfall was the very doctor she had humiliated that morning. Hargrove called an emergency staff meeting. In the main conference room, adorned with her numerous awards and photos of her cutting ribbons with her brother, the mayor, over 30 staff members sat in uncomfortable silence. Dr. Chen has been terminated for severe protocol violations, Hargrove announced, her voice even but threatening. She treated a patient without proper documentation, insurance verification, or administrative approval. She paused, her gaze fixing on Dr. Washington, who had just entered still wearing his lab coat, the Mexican-American doctor who had assisted Maya in saving Everett's life. I trust this is the last time any of you allow emotions to override procedure, Hargrove continued coldly. We don't operate on instinct. We operate according to established protocols. The tension was palpable. Bradley Wilson sat at the far end, smiling smugly as if he'd been personally vindicated. Dr. Washington remained silent, but his clenched fists beneath the table betrayed his anger. Hargrove displayed charts showing revenue increases, patient acceptance rates, and quarterly profits up 16.2%. These results come from discipline and eliminating disruptive elements. We cannot allow an inexperienced resident to compromise our system because of misplaced compassion. The room remained silent as she concluded with chilling finality. At Westlake, profitability takes precedence over sentiment. Remember that. While Hargrove believed she had restored order, Thomas Rodriguez, the security guard who had escorted Maya out, sat in the surveillance room with an unusual expression. On his screen was a list of security footage files, including audio recordings from a system upgrade installed 3 months prior. In one recording from the previous night, Hargrove could be clearly heard at the reception desk. That presumptuous little Asian girl has been asking for dismissal, and she just handed me the perfect excuse. Thomas closed his eyes and sighed. He thought of his grandmother, who had been denied treatment at another hospital because of her broken English and expired Medicaid card. He knew that helplessness. He opened his personal email and typed, "Alexander, I'm head of security monitoring at Westlake. I have what you need. Send." That evening, Hargrove poured herself an expensive Cabernet in her penthouse apartment, believing the day's unpleasantness was behind her. Order restored, an inconvenient element removed, the system preserved. What she didn't know was that James Everett, the man she had dismissed as a vagrant, was meeting with investigators, lawyers, and data analysts in a conference room across town. "I want everything on Elizabeth Hargrove," Everett directed. "Every patient denied treatment, every discriminatory comment, every financial transfer between Westlake and the mayor's office for the past 5 years." "Should we keep this confidential, sir?" an assistant asked nervously. Everett's gaze was steely. "No, I want everything broadcast live when the time comes." When the powerful sleep soundly on their thrones, they rarely notice the storm gathering from those they've trampled underfoot. Hargrove, believing her authority absolute, had no idea that in crushing Maya Chen, she had ignited a fuse that would soon detonate her entire world. From his office overlooking the city, James Everett stood by the window, contemplating not the urban landscape, but Maya's face, determined, compassionate, resolute as she fought to save him without knowing his identity. A person like her, expelled from medicine simply for upholding its most sacred principle, indicated a system fundamentally corrupted, and this corruption required surgical excision at its root. That day, Everett assembled not just a meeting but a task force, attorneys specializing in discrimination law, data analysts, former medical inspectors, and cybersecurity experts with government backgrounds. I want every piece of evidence regarding the exclusion of minority patients, every treatment denial, every missing patient file. I want Westlake's financial records for the past 5 years, where the money went and what it purchased. 3 days later, the numbers appeared on screens in the conference room. 83% of minority patients without premium insurance denied admission, even in critical conditions. Over 270 emergency cases marked ineligible without medical justification. Following each hospital budget restructuring, substantial donations flowed to Mayor Hargrove's campaigns totaling $2.7 million over 5 years. This isn't just discrimination, one investigator noted. It's a modern healthcare apartheid system operating through data concealment and financial manipulation. Everett studied the statistics, his expression hardening. We'll prepare thoroughly before making our move. Meanwhile, Thomas Rodriguez was compiling internal audio and video footage. Beyond Hargrove's comments about Maya, he found Bradley saying in the break room, "That Asian girl only plays hero to the poor for career advancement," and the finance director boasting about cutting $700,000 in healthcare costs by eliminating unprofitable patients. Thomas encrypted everything and sent it to Blackwood with a message. "I've been silent too long. Now I'm standing on the right side." Dr. Washington, who had assisted Maya that night, was also wrestling with his conscience. When he had seen her escorted out like a criminal, he had felt like a coward for his silence. Now, when questioned, he simply stated, "I'm a doctor. I cannot watch lives being treated as financial statistics." He contacted Everett and volunteered as an internal witness. Everett developed a two-pronged strategy, a legal assault based on internal emails, financial records, and statistical discrimination patterns, coupled with a public exposure campaign featuring security footage, discriminatory language, and Maya's desperate efforts to save him amid institutional indifference. "Are you certain you want to make this public?" Blackwood asked. "It will shake the entire healthcare industry." "If an industry trembles because one doctor saved a life," Everett replied, "then that industry deserves to be shaken to its foundations." Bradley Wilson, who had boasted about getting rid of the troublesome Asian girl, had no idea that his social media posts, internal messages, and break-room conversations were being compiled into a comprehensive evidence database. Meanwhile, Hargrove, engrossed in charity galas and meetings with her brother and investors, still believed she had eliminated the problem at its source. What she didn't realize was that the seed she had crushed Maya Chen was about to bloom into her greatest nightmare. Tuesday afternoon, Bradley Wilson posted on his personal Facebook, "Rules exist for a reason. Some people need to learn their place." The post garnered dozens of likes, mostly from administrative and management staff. A colleague commented, "These young doctors think compassion trumps protocol." Bradley responded with a laughing emoji. He didn't know his post had been immediately screenshot and added to the evidence folder in Everett's investigation. In his apartment across town, Thomas Rodriguez reviewed footage he had extracted from the security system's backup server. The video was unremarkable, but the audio was crystal clear. Hargrove speaking to Bradley in her office. "That little Asian girl. I've been waiting for an excuse to get rid of her. She makes those indigent patients think this is a charity. We're running a business, not a soup kitchen." Thomas sent the clip to Blackwood with a message. "You need to see this." Then he sent a separate message directly to Maya. "An apology isn't enough, but you should see this video." When Blackwood received the email, He listened to the recording multiple times before forwarding it to Everett through an encrypted channel. Everett called immediately. "Is it public yet?" "Not yet. I wanted your confirmation first." "Good. Wait for my signal." At Westlake, the architects of Maya's dismissal remained oblivious to the gathering storm. Bradley continued engaging with supportive comments on social media. Hargrove, in a meeting with the finance department, declared confidently, "James Everett is a businessman. He won't waste time on an unknown resident. Let her complain, the media won't care." A manager nodded silently, but glanced nervously at his phone, where a message from an anonymous number had just appeared. "We have the recordings. Your name is on the witness list." Within 2 days, over 20 former Westlake employees began sending information to Everett's investigation team, nurses who had resigned, doctors whose contracts weren't renewed, administrative assistants who were silenced when they raised concerns. All shared a common observation. They don't want good healthcare providers. They want people who remain silent. The disparate documents formed a cohesive picture of systemic discrimination concealed under the guise of financial optimization. Maya, upon receiving the recording from Thomas, sat in silence for a long time. Each word, that little Asian girl confirmed what she had always felt but could never prove. No one had acknowledged her mistreatment. No one had believed she was targeted because of her ethnicity. But now, Hargrove's own voice provided irrefutable evidence. She messaged Thomas, "You don't need to apologize, but thank you for having the courage to record this." In another room, Everett reviewed numerous emails and legal reports being categorized and marked. He turned to Blackwood. "Do we have enough?" Blackwood nodded. "Not just to sue, but to dismantle their entire operation." "Good," Everett replied. "It's time to show the world what's really happening behind Westlake's pristine facade." Hargrove's final words before her downfall were not an apology or expression of regret, but a declaration of triumph. "We've eliminated the disruptive elements. This quarter's profits are up 16%. Westlake is back on track." In the grand ballroom of the Metropolitan Hotel, where the Healthcare Executive of the Year Gala was being held, Elizabeth Hargrove raised her champagne glass amid polite applause. Her designer gown sparkled under crystal chandeliers, her diamond earrings catching the light as she smiled victoriously. Around her were hospital CEOs, pharmaceutical executives, healthcare officials, and prominently, Mayor Richard Hargrove, who had received millions in indirect donations through carefully obscured channels. Hargrove turned toward the large screen at the center of the room, where a video titled "Celebrating Westlake's Excellence" was about to play. The screen showed images of her cutting ribbons, shaking hands with patients, posing with newborn Saul carefully selected faces. She raised her glass, her expression smug. They thought a nameless resident could challenge an institution. She murmured to a colleague, "Watch and learn how a healthcare system should be run." The screen flickered. At first, no one noticed, assuming it was a technical glitch. But when the image of Hargrove with the mayor disappeared, replaced by a black screen, the room fell silent. A moment passed. Then a voice, too clear to ignore. "That little Asian girl, I've been waiting for an excuse to get rid of her." The entire room froze. On the screen wasn't the promotional footage for the gala, but security camera footage showing Hargrove speaking to Bradley, her expression contemptuous, her tone dismissive. Another clip began playing. 270, 3 minority patients denied treatment this quarter. Excellent work, Bradley. Every dollar saved is another bonus. A glass shattered somewhere in the room. Guests slowly set down their champagne flutes, no longer drinking. A title appeared on the screen. The Westlake Discrimination Investigation, sponsored by James Everett, CEO, Everett Global Health. A male voice resonated through the speaker's deep, authoritative, unmistakable. I am James Everett. On the night of April 15th, I suffered a severe accident and was denied treatment at Westlake Memorial Hospital because I lacked identification and insurance at the time. If not for Dr. Maya Chen, a resident who didn't recognize me, I would have died. I witnessed blatant discrimination, institutionalized indifference, and human lives reduced to financial calculations. The room held its collective breath. Those who had applauded Hargrove moments earlier were now quietly backing away, some already heading for the exits. From a side entrance, federal agents in dark suits entered, badges clearly visible. One approached Hargrove, speaking in a measured tone. "Elizabeth Hargrove, you're under arrest for systematic discrimination, healthcare fraud, and misappropriation of federal funds." The sound of handcuffs closing around her wrists echoed across the ballroom. Hargrove jerked backward. "This is absurd. It's her, that girl. It's a media stunt." But no one responded. All cameras were trained on Hearth woman who had stood at the pinnacle of power, now trembling under the harsh light of public scrutiny. A figure appeared in the doorway. The crowd parted as Maya Chen entered, wearing a tailored charcoal suit, flanked by James Everett and Alexander Blackwood. No one applauded, but all eyes followed Hearth doctor, who had been escorted out in disgrace, now returning as the embodiment of justice. The screens continued displaying evidence, a meeting recording from 2 months prior showing Hargrove instructing Bradley, 270, 3 minority patients, deny them all. "Good work, Bradley. We can't let the hospital become a charity." The words sliced through the gala like a knife. Guests stood frozen, some filming with their phones. The hashtag #WestlakeGate began trending within minutes. Charts appeared on screen. A spreadsheet titled "Patient Screening Audit," showing columns for ethnicity and insurance type, with rejected marked on nearly 90% of entries labeled as minority and uninsured or Medicaid. Next came a heat map showing areas with the highest patient denial rates, predominantly poor, immigrant, and minority neighborhoods. Blackwood advanced to the next slide, a timeline of cash flows from internal financial reports. March, emergency treatment budget cut. April, $450,000 donation to Mayor Hargrove's re-election campaign. May, rejection rate for uninsured patients increased by 24%. Evidence revealed that patient records had been altered or deleted with Hargrove's and the finance director's signatures. Everett's voice continued, calm but powerful. "I am James Everett. I was denied treatment at Westlake when I had an accident without identification. I was treated as disposable. If not for Dr. Ploying, Maya Chen, who dared to break protocol to save me, I would have died on that hospital floor. She saved me not because she knew my identity, but because to her, every life has inherent value not measured by insurance coverage or social status." The ballroom remained silent, many guests visibly moved. Everett continued, his voice strengthening. "We have investigated and proven this isn't an isolated incident or management error. This is policy, a system driven by discrimination, corruption, and callous indifference." The screen displayed internal emails. From Bradley Wilson, "If she saves another homeless person, I'll ask Hargrove to terminate her." From Legal Department, "No documentation, no treatment. Each such case represents financial liability." From Hargrove, "We're not rejecting patients, we're optimizing resources." Next came images of patients who had been denied treatment: an elderly Asian woman, a Latino child with asthma, a black college student with appendicitis. Each face an indictment. Each story, a call for justice too long delayed. Media crews gathered outside the hotel. Federal officers established a perimeter. Television channels switched to live coverage. Within 30 minutes, Maya Chen's name topped national Twitter trends. Hargrove, now handcuffed, her face ashen, shouted, "This is fabricated. I'm the one who kept Westlake solvent through the pandemic." The federal agent interrupted her. "You're being recorded. I suggest remaining silent to avoid additional charges." The room's atmosphere had transformed from celebration to reckoning, the harsh light of truth now illuminating those who had operated in ethical darkness. Everett turned to Maya, speaking quietly but audibly. "Now the world knows who you are." Maya didn't smile. She simply stood tall, because this moment wasn't about personal vindication, but recognition for all had been silenced, overlooked, and discarded for being deemed unworthy of care. Amid camera flashes and hushed whispers, all eyes focused on an image no healthcare executive had anticipated. Elizabeth Hargrove, the pinnacle of medical administration power, now handcuffed. Her designer gown incongruous with her circumstances, sweat staining her makeup. Agent Sophia Martinez, with 15 years investigating healthcare discrimination, stepped forward. "Elizabeth Hargrove, you are under arrest for charges of systematic discrimination, embezzlement of federal healthcare funds, financial fraud, and abuse of office." Hargrove struggled against the handcuffs. "I didn't authorize anything. This is a smear campaign. She and Everett fabricated everything." Martinez remained impassive, signaling two agents to escort Hargrove, while another team approached Bradley Wilson, who was attempting to slip out through a service exit. As he reached for the door, an agent handed him a federal subpoena. From across the room, Maya approached and silently placed a Justice Department sealed envelope in his hands. No explanation was necessary. Bradley, with his venomous emails and cold indifference, had become an integral part of Hargrove's discriminatory machine. "I was just following protocol," he stammered. "And those protocols violated federal law and medical ethics," Martinez replied curtly. James Everett stepped forward, standing supportively beside Maya. He addressed the stunned audience, the damning evidence still displayed on screens behind him. "I've just signed the acquisition papers. Everett Global Health has taken control of Westlake Memorial Hospital, effective immediately, and from this moment forward, the facility will be renamed." He looked at Maya, still standing composed amid the chaos. "The Maya Chen Medical Center." A wave of silence swept the room, followed by spontaneous applause. Those who had occupied VIP tables, who had raised glasses with Hargrove, now stood in recognition, not from fear or obligation, but genuine respect. Hargrove, being led away, her face flushed with anger, shouted, "Who is she to have her name on a prestigious institution? She hasn't even completed her residency." Maya turned, her voice calm but carrying weight. "I don't need your validation. I have the trust of hundreds of patients you rejected and ignored. And now I'll do what you never could: save lives without conditions or prejudice." The side doors opened as a group entered: former patients, community members from eastern neighborhoods, nurses who had resigned from Westlake. They carried handmade signs: "Justice for Dr. Chen. Healthcare is a right, not a privilege." Everett invited them onto the stage. They stood behind Maya like a living testament, people who had been voiceless in the old system, now becoming witnesses for the new. Media coverage exploded. Headlines appeared across networks. Breaking: Hargrove arrested. Everett announces healthcare reform. Dr. Maya Chen, from fired to founder. As Hargrove was escorted past the guests, she turned back, her voice bitter. "You're not destroying me. You just got lucky." Maya didn't look back. She only replied, eyes fixed ahead, "I'm not trying to destroy you. I'm building something that leaves no room for what you represent." As Hargrove was led away in handcuffs amid camera flashes, and Bradley bowed his head under federal investigation, across the city, Those who had been marginalized by the system began to envision a place that would transform from a symbol of injustice to one of healing. And that place now bore a new name, the Maya Chen Medical Center. The new sign was installed the following morning as the sun rose over the city skyline. Residents from eastern neighborhoods where Maya had lived gathered at the entrance, not to protest but to witness a historic reversal. The building that once displayed the golden inscription, Westlake Memorial Hospital, Excellence Through Selectivity, now bore a simpler, more profound motto, Every life deserves care. The marble lobby gleamed under new lighting. The halls had been repainted, but what had truly changed wasn't the physical structure but the operational philosophy. At the reception desk, where Bradley had once sat, screening patients like a border agent, now sat a familiar face, Nurse Patel, who had hesitated that fateful night but had since found her courage. She greeted everyone who entered with genuine warmth, regardless of their appearance, language, or insurance status. Beside her computer, she had placed a handwritten note, "Ask what hurts before asking for insurance." An elderly immigrant woman nervously presented a tattered Medicaid card. Nurse Patel gently pushed it back. "Keep it for now. Here, treatment comes first, paperwork later." In the emergency department, there were no more cold calculations or scrutinizing glances. Instead, Dr. Washington, who had stood by silently when Maya was fired, now served as emergency medicine director, his white coat bearing the new hospital logo. He had reorganized the entire intake process. Patients were clinically assessed before any insurance verification, and weekly community health screenings provided free preventive care to underserved populations. In the Security Operations Center, where orders had once been given to quickly remove problematic individuals, Thomas Rodriguez now served as head of security. He walked the hospital corridors each morning, ensuring no one experienced the treatment Maya had endured. On his office wall hung a framed photo of Maya kneeling beside Everett in the emergency footage, with a handwritten quote beneath, "Justice doesn't begin with verdicts. It begins with right actions when no one is watching." Maya, though celebrated, declined an executive position. "I want to be among the patients who need me," she explained. Instead, she served as community health director, regularly working in the emergency department and training new residents. For the first time in the hospital's history, the residency program included over 70% minority doctors and nurses. Within 3 months of the renaming, the Maya Chen Medical Center had treated over 7,200 uninsured patients without rejection, received $8 million in charitable funding, and been selected to pilot a nonprofit healthcare model for the entire metropolitan area. Every morning, hundreds gathered outside not because they were forced to wait, but because for the first time they believed they would receive dignified care regardless of their background. At the official grand opening ceremony, James Everett addressed not wealthy donors but patients, healthcare workers, and community members. In the front row sat Maya's parents, tears streaming down their faces as they held a photo of their daughter on her medical school graduation day. "We haven't just renamed a hospital," Everett declared. "We've transformed how it values human beings from a place that once viewed lives as budget items to one where every person is recognized by their humanity, not their insurance status." As applause thundered through the auditorium, Nurse Patel quietly live-streamed Maya standing at the side of the stage. She didn't approach the podium or seek the spotlight. She simply smiled, arms crossed, knowing the entire institution now embodied her values. As the Maya Chen Medical Center served thousands who had once been abandoned, in a federal detention center 200 miles away, Elizabeth Hargrove sat in an orange jumpsuit, scrubbing toilets in exchange for commissary privileges. Gone were the designer clothes, champagne flutes, and adoring audiences. No one called her Director Hargrove anymore. Sentenced to 18 years for systematic discrimination, healthcare fraud, embezzlement, and obstruction of justice, Hargrove had become a shadow of her former self, her eyes vacant, her words meaningless, clinging to memories of lost power. Everything she had valued disintegrated rapidly. Her husband filed for divorce 2 weeks after her sentencing. Her children requested name changes, severing all connections. Her assets were frozen, her shares revoked, and the political allies who had once called her visionary now pretended she had never existed. One morning, as Hargrove sorted laundry in the prison work program, a guard informed her, "You have a visitor." She hadn't received visitors in months. She straightened her uniform, attempting to maintain dignity as she entered the visitation room. When she saw who waited on the other side of the glass, her heart sank. Thomas Rodriguez. He wore civilian clothes now, no security uniform, but his demeanor was confident, worlds apart from the guard who had once bowed his head before her at Westlake. On the table lay a white envelope embossed with silver lettering. Official renaming ceremony, the Maya Chen Medical Center. "You came to mock me," Hargrove said bitterly. Thomas shook his head. "I came to do what you never could, treat another human being with respect." "Respect for me? After everything?" "I'm not here for you," Thomas replied quietly. "I'm here for Dr. Chen." He pushed the envelope forward. "She wants you to have one chance to see what you once deemed worthless, a healthcare center that doesn't prioritize profit over people. A place now run by those you excluded from your system, saving the lives you abandoned." Inside the envelope was an invitation and a large photograph. Maya standing beside James Everett, surrounded by hundreds of healthcare workers and former patients denied treatment, all holding signs reading, "We are the system now." Beneath the photo was a quote, "Doing what's right, however small, always creates greater impact than any title. Dr. Maya Chen." Hargrove stared at the photo, her lips pressed tightly together, not in anger, but for the first time in many months, in shame. Thomas stood to leave. At the door, he turned back. "You thought you built an empire, but you handed Dr. Chen the tools to dismantle it. The difference is, she didn't destroy it out of vengeance. She rebuilt it to heal." The door closed, leaving Hargrove alone with the photograph. She searched the faces in the image, finding none of the influential figures who had once surrounded her, only those who had been invisible to her, who had now rewritten the narrative she thought belonged to her. While Hargrove sat amid gray walls and fluorescent lights, contemplating a transformation occurring without her, in the Grand Hall of the National Medical Conference in Washington, D.C., Maya Chen approached the podium before thousands. She was no longer the young resident in bloodied scrubs. Today, she wore an elegant navy suit with a subtle silver pina stethoscope intertwined with a heart, symbolizing the humanized healthcare system she had helped create. Behind her, the backdrop displayed 3 words: compassion, courage, change. Maya gazed at the audience, representatives from over 50 leading hospitals, medical schools, hundreds of healthcare students, and patients who had once been denied treatment, now honored guests. "I once thought termination was the end," she began, her voice soft but clear. "It turned out to be a beginning. I was expelled not for doing something wrong, but for doing something right, saving someone the system deemed unworthy of saving." The hall fell silent. "Today, I make one promise. Never again. Never again will a healthcare provider have to choose between conscience and career. Never again will a patient be turned away because they lack insurance or have the wrong background. The first applause came from an elderly woman in the front row who had received life-saving treatment at the center after being rejected elsewhere. Then the entire auditorium rose to their feet. Maya raised her hand gently. I cannot transform an entire country, but I can plant seeds. The first seed is all of you medical students who were once told you didn't belong, who didn't have the right connections or background. Today, I announce the Maya Chen Scholarship Fund for minority, immigrant, and underserved medical students, those with compassion and dedication, who were once rejected because of circumstances beyond their control. The screen displayed the scholarship logo, hands cradling a heart with the words, "Every hand can heal." No one will be prevented from practicing medicine because of poverty. No one will be forbidden from saving lives because of where they were born. The applause was deafening. Young students in the back rows wiped away tears. A Vietnamese-American student whispered to her friend, "She's like us. Now we have a path forward." After her speech, James Everett joined her on stage. Everett Global Health is committing $120 million to expand the Maya Chen Medical Center model to 6 major cities, including Detroit, Phoenix, Atlanta, Baltimore, Los Angeles, and Miami. We will establish nonprofit medical centers without financial barriers, racial biases, or ethical compromises. Camera shutters clicked rapidly as news outlets broadcast live. Everett announces largest private investment in equitable healthcare. Dr. Maya Chen becomes national symbol for healthcare reform. Following the conference, Maya received invitations from major networks and prestigious universities. She accepted only one to lead a medical ethics program at Eastern Community College, where she had once been told she might not be a good cultural fit. I want to start where I was once deemed inadequate, she explained. From that day forward, every lecture Maya gave began with the same principle. I'm not here to teach you merely how to treat illness. I'm here to remind you that the person before you is not a case number. They are a human being deserving of your best care. 6 months after her Washington speech, Maya Chen's story wasn't just a media phenomenon, but an official chapter in medical ethics curricula at over 250 universities nationwide. From a resident publicly humiliated and expelled, she had become a living symbol of healthcare justice, not because she fought against power, but because she created a new model that rendered the old paradigm obsolete. The Chen approach, as it became known, was implemented at medical institutions globally. Students learned not only clinical skills, but ethical courage. Harvard Medical School and Johns Hopkins invited Maya to lecture on modern medical ethics. Stanford erected a statue titled The Unconditional Healer, inspired by the security footage of Maya saving Everett. In Canada, South Korea, and Kenya, community health centers began adopting the nonprofit model she had helped establish. At World Health Organization headquarters, she addressed the World Forum on Healthcare Equity, becoming the youngest keynote speaker in its history. On social media, Chen Principle surpassed 100 million mentions within a year, appearing in charity campaigns, medical textbooks, protest signs, and even on hospital walls in remote regions. A nurse in Ghana posted, "I once thought my background disqualified me from medicine. Then I learned about Dr. Chen." A Latino physician wrote, "I teach my students that excellence isn't measured by the prestige of your hospital, but by the lives you save regardless of their status." A high school student in the Bronx wrote in her college application, "I want to study medicine to be like Dr. Maya Chen, to wear a white coat, but to earn what it represents." At the Global Humanitarian Awards at United Nations headquarters, Maya accepted the highest honor not with a prepared speech, but holding a photo of her father, who had died after being repeatedly denied cardiac care. "I once thought termination was the end," she said quietly. But it was merely a period in a larger story, a story I had to rewrite because the previous narrative was fundamentally flawed. I was humiliated for upholding my oath. But that didn't diminish might compelled me to grow beyond the constraints of those who thought they could determine who deserves to live and who can be discarded. She looked directly into the cameras. I didn't come here for celebration. I came to remind everyone that while vengeance is tempting, it only perpetuates cycles of harm. Building something so transformative that injustice has no place to exist, that is my choice. The audience rose in standing ovation. Among them stood Nurse Patel, now Patient Advocacy Director for the entire Chen Medical Network, Thomas Rodriguez, leading security ethics training across 9 centers, and Dr. Washington, speaking at international medical conferences on equitable emergency care. The story had come full circle, not with retribution, but with transformation. Every medical student now encountered a principle emblazoned on lecture hall walls. Don't respond to injustice with anger. Build something so magnificent that injustice becomes obsolete. Dr. Maya Chen. The story of Maya Chen isn't merely about a doctor wrongfully terminated, but a reminder that even in the most corrupt systems, compassion and justice can prevail. From being escorted out of a hospital in disgrace, Maya became an international symbol for medical ethics and healthcare reform, not through seeking revenge, but by creating something so powerful that the old paradigm became irrelevant. If you've ever been underestimated or punished for doing what's right, are you ready to transform that pain into positive change as Maya did? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share this story with those needing inspiration, and subscribe for more narratives about justice, resilience, and hope. Because sometimes, one person standing for what's right is enough to transform an entire system.